Ladies and gentlemen, it is 1:51 p.m. on Monday. Today is March the 2nd, 2020. I am Venerable Thich Thong Lai. I would like to send greetings to all people in the country and overseas compatriots. This morning, I want to spend a little time to have a few words of interest with a number of people in the country and abroad. You can see clearly that a few days ago, I had received information from my female disciple who lives in China. Her husband is a Chinese Communist member, and he works in Xi Jinping's regime. During the conversation on the phone, my disciple earnestly confided to me and said, "Master, please trust me. The Chinese Communists, after falling down on the issue of preventing the Wuhan corona flu, and with its cruel little mind, sent suicide bombers to attack the United States. Right now, in the national capital, U.S. government officials are in urgent meeting. The President of the United States has appointed the Vice President of the United States to operate the mission to catch these suicide bombers. Right in the state where I live, it is on alert and some schools are closed. The death tolls in this state is 3 and dozens have been affected. This proved that my disciple words are indeed not wrong. Even the state of California is on alert. But I believe that in the United States, a free country and a country with democracy will stop this corona flu. However, the important issue that I want to talk about is that I spoke to the people in the United States. There is no shortage of food. Although some areas populated by Asian race with a precautionary tradition, they approach to shopping centers such as Costco and Vietnamese food markets to purchase and stock necessities. That is good for the U.S. economy, but it is not good for morality. There are a number of markets that have been taken advantage of in this situation and increased the price of rice and necessities, especially Vietnamese market. The U.S. consumer protection had been addressed, the price increase prevention. I also shared out this information so that any stores violating the consumer law, you can denounce yourself. So, there is no problem in the United States because it is a free country. The U.S. government always protects the American citizens and protect the public. I want to make it clear, the purpose of today's talk was because yesterday, after I received numerous phone calls from individuals whom are interested in the situation of the Vietnamese homeland. They asked me why the Venerable calls soldiers of the Communist Army General to carry out a coup. Venerable actually think this is the only way to arrest the 3 top leaders of the Vietnamese Communist Party, Nguyễn Phú Trọng, Nguyễn Xuân Phúc, and Nguyễn Thị Kim Ngân, could save the Vietnamese people. Why didn't Venerable call for protesting? Let me tell you the truth. The Vietnamese people have lived under communist firm grip for 45 years and under the gunpoint of the police, so they cannot and they are not ignorant. I think it is more than enough talking about the crimes of the communism and expose their inhumanity behavior to the people in the country. Furthermore, it is not the time for us to sit down and talk about the evil stories of the communists. The urgent situation is we need to act to save the people of Vietnam. We need to act in a way it would benefit the people in the country. This is not the time that we gather together for meetings to condemn the communists. Last Saturday, during the dinner in Adia village in Leo, there were dignitaries leading the religious union, including Presbyterians, including Hao and Cao Dao. These religious dignitaries came to visit the village. They all spoke of the cruelty of the Viet Cong and Vietnamese government. I responded that the Vietnamese people who still live in the country knew well about the cruelty and barbarism of the Communist Party more than those living abroad. These people are living with the communists every day. They have to endure cruel treatment directly under the communist regime. They have understood better than us. I just want to ask all of you to show the way to help the Vietnamese to escape this tribulation. At the time, I called for all the military commanders of the Vietnamese communists, all the people with authorities from the army's officer level, to be a gabuk, because only them can capture these three leaders and open these three leaders that open the borders. The three leaders brought in the influenza to do things that are harmful to the country of Vietnam. It is just these three guys. You can see clearly in Korea, a woman from South Korea went from the epidemic area in Wuhan and returned home. She disobeyed the isolation order and went to the Truong Tien Dai Church. Eventually, among the 2,000 parishioners, after the test, 1,850 people were positive for the coronavirus. What was done, but the Koreans protested in front of the church for an entire day. The South Koreans have demanded that the South Korean president must resign. Whether the president of the South Korea is resigning or not, the story will be demoralizing. The South Korean president was elected by the people, so if he is not good at preventing the epidemic, then the South Korean people have the right to impeach him. Currently, there are many former South Korean presidents in prison. It is a country with democracy, constitutional, and trias political, executive, legislative, and judicial country. The South Koreans didn't realize that they shouldn't demonstrate in an area where the plague is raving. Because of that, the number of infected cases have gone up to 4,000. Over 4,000 are now infected with the coronavirus. Because the love of my country, I don't want to see many innocent Vietnamese die. For this, I analyze to let people in the country and overseas understand that it is not the time to sit down to talk about the communist crimes. Now, it is not the time to get together and condemn about communist crimes or what we say cliché. This is the time we need to take practical action, clear instructions, and accurate information to make it clear to the people in the country. People in the country obviously do not know whom to trust anymore. They have lost their faith. They do not believe in the propaganda speakers of the Communist Party. They can clearly see Nguyễn Xuân Phúc saying things and conflicting himself. Nguyễn Xuân Phúc announced that the epidemic has ended, and Nguyễn Đức Trung, also a top name of Hanoi, said that the things were not transparent. The fault in hiding information about the epidemic will make them pay an expensive price in the future. That is the way of the Vietnamese leaders practice in the country. One leader said this and the other say that. All Vietnamese in the country need the correct information so they can prepare for the dark days that will be covering Vietnam. Many overseas forums now provide information. Each forum has a number of admirers to follow. My live stream is for me to speak to people in the country, to my disciples who are counting on me. I do this with the love from my heart, the heart of the Vietnamese, and want to protect the Vietnamese people. We do not need to talk about the condemnation of the communists anymore, but we need to analyze that the people can clearly see in order to prepare for their survival. Now I want to analyze the story of a stubborn Korean woman who disobeyed quarantine orders and ended up causing a crisis in South Korea. All the chaos was caused by one infected person. From Chinese New Year to now, since January 21, 20, an epidemic in Wuhan, Vietnam has opened its border gates and opened wider to receive Chinese communists and those Chinese from the epidemic area. You have to pay attention to this. From January 21st into the end of February. February 26 or February 27, which is more than a month, the number of people infected in Vietnam is only 16. Can you believe that? While South Korea doesn't have common borders with Chinese communists, North and South Korea are separated in a demilitarized zone in Panamos. Only one South Korean returned from China stubbornly disobeyed the quarantine order, which created a pathetic disaster for South Korea. During that time, all border gates of the 6th province, northern Vietnam, are open. How many Chinese people have entered from February 21st to today? You must use your head and do a mathematical addition and multiplication to see the number of infections. The communists have been long concealed. However, they hide their heads but forgot to cover their tails. For example, let's analyze the issue of reopen the school in Vietnam. Minister Vũ Đức Đâm requested Minister Nga, who is the Minister of Education, to decide to reopen the school, but Mr. Nga feared that he would be brought to trial before the people. So he pointed fingers to Prime Minister Nguyễn Xuân Phúc. Prime Minister Nguyễn Xuân Phúc said if to open the school, then the ending result it would be inevitable. He then pointed directly to the Prime Deputy Minister and Health Minister, who does not have a nurse license. They all know that during the outbreak, the Vietnamese nation would be a genocide. The death toll is in the millions, and they will become the sinisters of the Vietnamese race. Their names will be recorded in the history as the traitors for inviting Chinese invaders and devastation of the Vietnamese people. I target directly to the 3 leaders, Nguyễn Phú Trọng, Nguyễn Xuân Phúc, and Nguyễn Thị Kim Ngân. I don't condemn the military district generals and city-level officers because they are merely receiving orders from the 3 leaders, Nguyễn Phú Trọng, Nguyễn Xuân Phúc, and Nguyễn Thị Kim Ngân. Imprison these 3 enemies of the nation is the key to save the people of Vietnam. The sooner these criminals get compensated and confined, the better for the Vietnamese people. They ordered the border gates to open. Who dared to close the gate? At this moment, it is very difficult to Vietnamese people to protest on the street. If they gather to protest, they will be infected. Please stop asking me to call people for demonstration. I had called for many demonstrations before the outbreak. At this point, I know for sure that even if I had hundreds and thousands of others asking for a demonstration, the people of Saigon, the people of Hanoi, the people of Nha Trang, Da Nang, and all areas where the epidemic are raving, they won't dare to demonstrate. Currently, we have to admit that is not an option. There are over 100,000 Vietnamese overseas that are living, working, and studying at the university in Korea. Among the 100,000 Vietnamese overseas that are present in South Korea, there are 20,000 overseas Vietnamese that are demanding to go home to avoid the flu outbreak. Unfortunately, the number of flights from Vietnam to South Korea and from South Korea to Vietnam are very limited because of the no-flight order. The Vietnamese government has announced that they will take back 20,000 overseas Vietnamese living in Korea to return to Vietnam and take them to the refugee camp for isolation. Currently, there are 100,000 in Korea. Looking at the statistics of the 100,000 Vietnamese living in Korea, as well as studying in Korea, there are about 20,000 people who are demanding to return home because of fear of this epidemic. Why did the Vietnamese communists accept these people? Why didn't the leaders of the Vietnamese government, Nguyễn Phú Trọng, Nguyễn Xuân Phúc, Nguyễn Thị Kim Ngân, close the border gates to stop the Chinese from the epidemic area? But they accept the number of 20,000 overseas Vietnamese who are living, studying, and working in Korea. The reason is simple. They want these 20,000 overseas Vietnamese in Korea to return to the concentration camp because it is not free. These overseas Vietnamese have to pay 150,000 dong to 200,000 dong per person during the isolation period of 14 days. If you don't believe me, ask people who have already been in the quarantine areas. There are some quarantine zones that are completely free, and in some quarantine areas are not. They take money from the quarantine people. Currently, the number of these 20,000 people will be brought to Vietnam as their request. Out of the 100,000 overseas Vietnamese living in Korea, 20,000 people have requested to return. The South Korean government made it clear that if these 20,000 overseas Vietnamese decide to stay in Korea, and if they live in the center of the epidemic area of South Korea, the government will provide health monitoring and isolation centers are completely free. These people will be treated equally as Korean citizens, and they want to return to Vietnam. The Korean government contacted the Vietnamese government to arrange transportation for the Vietnamese government to receive these people from South Korea. I would like to ask a question for your opinion. Why does the government of Hanoi accept that 20,000 overseas Vietnamese are studying and working in Korea? The first answer is money. Each person who enters the center of the isolation camp will pay a fee as a cost of isolation. The second is that there will be a way to blame for a corona infection because 20,000 Vietnamese were from Korea, moved back to Vietnam. This would be the reason that caused the infection outbreak. They will blame the outbreak in Vietnam is due to the infection from Korea, not from them opening freely its borders to China. That is the plot of the Communist government of Vietnam. You should look closely. They will use this reason so they will not be embarrassed. Recently, the U.S. quarantine agency, CDC, has removed Vietnam from the list of infected countries. These countries have stopped the epidemic and no longer need funding aids to control the Wuhan virus. The funding aid package is $2,500 million, which is approximately $2.5 billion. The Viet Cong has two benefits. The first benefit is that it has been a long time to hide out about the outbreak. It has long claimed it has ceased the epidemic, and now it wants to receive the funding aid from the United States in the package of $2.5 billion. However, they declared the end of the outbreak a week ago. Now, they can't have another outbreak again without any cause. What should they do? If they claim the translation was through Wu Nhi border gate from the 6th border gates, then they would be brought to the Chinese Communist Party of Xi Jinping for punishment, so they would not dare do that. The best way is to say it's because of the 20,000 Vietnamese living in South Korea. The Vietnamese government does not have enough medical and financial resources to fund the tens and thousands of people from an epidemic region in Korea. Now that we will keep the Vietnamese communists from being embarrassed to the United States. At that time, Prime Minister Nguyễn Xuân Phúc will ask for the aid amount of the total of $2.5 billion that the U.S. has promised to use to provide aid to infected countries. The second benefit is to blame that the number of people who died on the streets, in the parks of Pleiku City, and places where numbers of people died from the so-called hit by the wind. It was not Vietnamese government's fault because they kept the border gates open to China, but because the reception of 20,000 overseas Vietnamese living in Korea returning to Vietnam. You can see clearly, and please use your head, if a South Korean woman who came back from China and refused to be isolated can cause 4,000 infected cases in South Korea, then hundreds and thousands of Chinese people came to Vietnam. What is the infected case that caused the hide by the Vietnamese communists? There is no need to say more. I only analyze to prove what I heard, what I saw, and what I think is right. The number of Vietnamese who died from illnesses in Vietnam is high, but the doctors were ordered to declare the cause of death are from the wind, from high blood pressure, die from cerebral hemorrhaging, not because of the Wuhan corona flu. There is nothing better than blaming the 20,000 overseas Vietnamese studying and working in Korea. And that is the main reason Vietnam has remitted the Wuhan virus again. The Vietnamese communist carries the fire in one hand and water in the other, lying and begging all the time. If you think that there is only one Korean from the infected Chinese area already it cost a very expensive price, now Vietnam has received 20,000 Vietnamese overseas from Korea. The outbreak in Vietnam will return. A reoccurring outbreak in Vietnam is due to infect from South Korea, not from China. So I want to confirm this for you to see clearly and know clearly and take measures. I apologize to all Vietnamese living abroad and in the country for giving me some time to earnestly speak with the military leaders of the Communist parties of Vietnam. Military generals, you also have wives and children. You also have parents. And you have the right mindset. Now I speak to you. I no longer speak as a person of the Republic of Vietnam. You are a communist because the immediate problem is to solve and save the people of Vietnam who have not been devastated by the Wuhan corona flu epidemic. Who else can close the borders to stop the influx of immigrants with Wuhan virus to kill your homeland, kill your people, and kill your parents? You also have your hometown and village. You are also Vietnamese. If you don't think about the health and life of your parents, then you must also think about the safety of your wife and children, your brothers, your teammates. So this message is a heartfelt appeal for me as a Vietnamese Buddhist monk to all officers whom holding from 12 soldiers and more, from platoon leaders to commanders, from commanders to the commanders of the military district. The lives of our parents, our brothers, your wife and children are all in your hands, not in the hands of our three brothers, Nguyễn Phú Trọng, Nguyễn Xuân Phúc, and Nguyễn Thị Kim Ngân. I need someone to step up as a Gorbachev in Vietnam. Why do I need this at the moment? Gorbachev did something to help the Russian people escape the deceitful communist life. Even though he was a Communist Party member and the General Secretary of the Soviet Communist Party, but he was the savior of the Russian nation. He was also the savior of the Eastern European nation. The collapse of the Western Berlin Wall and the Soviet Union was a merit by Gorbachev. I want you to hear my earnest appeal from the bottom of my heart. You must immediately catch the three top leaders, Nguyễn Phú Trọng, Nguyễn Xuân Phúc, and Nguyễn Thị Kim Ngân. These three leaders are still ruling the country is due to the support of the Vietnamese People's Army. The People's Army is the army that protects the people, not the three leaders that bring the invaders into the country to kill them. I find this hour to be very dangerous. No one can do that except you. The United States also cannot do it because the Constitution of the United States does not allow it. Vietnam is a country that still has a seat at the United Nations Secretary Council. Vietnam still has a government and an army of 5 million gunmen. The Chinese is currently not able to legitimize the Xingdong Treaty, which came into effect in early 2020. If the Chinese Communists attack Vietnam, the Chinese will become infamous and the world will punish. At present, Chinese Communists take advantage of the corona flu virus to legally destroy the Vietnamese people without being condemned by the world. I guarantee and I think that 4 million overseas compatriots will agree to support the ideas of the People's Army to stand up to arrest Nguyễn Phú Trọng, Nguyễn Xuân Phúc, Nguyễn Thị Kim Ngân. Personally, I agree the members of the THôNG temple system in the United States and my friends would support as well. Once again, a general of the Vietnamese Communists must stand up and arrest the 3 leaders who are now bringing the invaders of the Wuhan to wreak havoc in our homeland. I did not vote, and 4 million Vietnamese expatriates did not vote for Nguyễn Phú Trọng. The 95 million compatriots in the country did not elect Nguyễn Phú Trọng, but 4 million party members elected him so that Nguyễn Phú Trọng could become General Secretary of Communist Party and the President of Vietnam. However, since the day this plague happened to the people of Vietnam, many people have died, many people have collapsed on the street, and many people died instantly. It is unfair for their relatives to know that their fathers, their wives, and their brothers died from the corona flu, but they received a death certificate stating the cause of death was because of internal bleeding, or a stroke, or hit by the wind. If you think carefully, there were already dead from the coronavirus, including party members and their relatives. Army commanders also have relatives dead from the virus. The government of Vietnam are headed by the 3 top names, which are Nguyễn Phú Trọng, Nguyễn Xuân Phúc, and Nguyễn Thị Kim Ngân. What did they do for the people? What did it do for your country? You are the ones who voted him to be General Secretary and elected him to be President. What did he do for the country? The Japanese Prime Minister declared a permanent school closure, and he will be fully responsible. Hong Kong also gave each person $1,300 USD to prepare for the epidemic. That's what all leaders of free countries do, is try their best to help their people. You cannot sit still to watch these 3 guys continue to welcome the enemy to go into the country. Don't wait for the Chinese rebels. When Chinese communists have a great war, their people have a reason to go to the asylum of war, and they have the right to run from any countries with border gates open. No countries are open to the Chinese communists and to the Chinese people, except Vietnam. Why did Xi Jinping order 1,400,000 bulletproof vests? Why didn't he buy 1,400,000 protective vests for doctors and nurses on duty every day at the Epidemic Prevention Hospital? Once again, I earnestly call on all Vietnamese People's Army officers to act now. I know there is no other answer for this problem right now. This problem can be solved if one of the military generals stand up to be a Vietnamese Gorbachev. You will be grateful to the history of Vietnam, and the people of the country will forever appreciate your action. I guarantee that any general who captures Nguyễn Phú Trọng, Nguyễn Xuân Phúc, and Nguyễn Thị Kim Ngân and order the closures of the 6 border gates to the 8 Chinese provinces will be supported by the 4 million overseas compatriots. I am sure the U.S. government will also support this Gorbachev of Vietnam. You can set up a traditional You can set up a transitional government, which is the military government, to protect the country while establishing a multi-party democracy. I spend these last minutes calling on the army generals to be, or Gorbachev, to catch these three leaders. We people of Vietnam cannot possibly entrust our lives to these three names. Nguyễn Phú Trọng, Nguyễn Thị Kim Ngân have not done anything to protect the people. The rank of your shoulders of Lieutenant General Commanders of Military Region 1 or General Commanders of Military Region 2, indicating you are a senior officer in charge of protecting the people in your country. At this moment, I have no more to say. I am in the United States, and I am never at risk of being harmed when the country of Vietnam is invaded by Chinese communists. However, because the love of our nation, my heart is aching when I see our compatriots are shedding their blood. We are the descendants of the same ancestors. Therefore, we cannot sit still and be emotionless. I know for sure that only military commanders can do this. I send a message to the platoon commanders, and the division commanders. You have to do it before it's too late. Respectfully and earnestly send this message to the senior officers of the People's Army. The lives of your parents, your wife and children, and 95 million Vietnamese will die because of the three leaders, Nguyễn Phú Trọng, Nguyễn Xuân Phúc, and Nguyễn Thị Kim Ngân. Respectfully.
Lúc đó quá trễ, lúc đó 6 sư đoàn của Tàu Cộng đang nằm tại Việt Nam, nó sẽ đem quý vị ra và nó bắn hết. Tôi nói thật ra, nó sẽ đem quý vị ra nó giết trước. Ngay giờ phút này Tàu Cộng chưa có bị coi như nội chiến và sẽ nội chiến một ngày không xa. Tàu Cộng chưa phát động quân đội để đánh Đài Loan, nhưng mà 1.400.000 áo giáp đó để làm gì? Quý vị nhìn cái đầu biết đi, dùng cái đầu để biết đi. Trong lúc Tàu Cộng đang đói này mà nó lại coi như dùng cái lực lượng cảnh sát biển nó tràn xuống Biển Đông, nó vẫn không bỏ cái tham vọng xâm chiếm Việt Nam. Và hiện tại nó mua 1.400.000 cái áo giáp để làm cái gì? Tại sao nó không mua 1.400.000 cái áo bảo vệ cho cái đội ngũ bác sĩ y tá của nó đang chết hàng ngày hàng giờ tại các bệnh viện phòng chống covid dịch? Cho nên một lần nữa tôi tha thiết kêu gọi tất cả các sĩ quan của quân đội nhân dân Việt Nam, quý vị phải hành động đi. Tôi biết tới giờ phút này không còn cái bài toán nào ngoài cái bài toán là các vị quân đội phải làm lên cái gì đó. Quý vị mà làm một Gorbachev Việt Nam, quý vị sẽ được lịch sử ghi danh, tổ quốc biết ơn và hàng triệu đồng bào biết ơn. Và tôi bảo đảm người tướng lãnh nào mà bắt được Nguyễn Phú Trọng, Nguyễn Xuân Phúc và Nguyễn Thị Kim Ngân mà bắt nhốt và ra lệnh đóng 6 biên giới, 6 tỉnh có biên giới với Tàu Cộng, quý vị sẽ được 4 triệu đồng bào hải ngoại này ủng hộ. Và tôi bảo đảm chính phủ Hoa Kỳ cũng ủng hộ, Quốc hội Hoa Kỳ cũng ủng hộ, và chính quý vị có thể thành lập lên một chính quyền tiếp nối là chính quyền quân sự để mà bảo vệ tổ quốc trong thời gian chờ chuyển tiếp, để mà thành lập một chính quyền dân chủ, đa đảng đa quyền và không cộng sản. Trân trọng kính chào, một lần nữa tha thiết dành những giờ phút cuối này kêu gọi các tướng lãnh quân khu phải là một Gorbachev để bắt ngay 3 tên đó, vì dân tộc Việt Nam chúng ta không thể nào mà giao vận mệnh cho 3 tên đó, mà 3 tên Nguyễn Phú Trọng, Nguyễn Xuân Phúc và Nguyễn Thị Kim Ngân nó không có một cái gì bảo vệ nhân dân. Như vậy cái danh hiệu quý vị mang trên cổ áo là Trung tướng Tư lệnh Quân khu 1, Đại tướng Tư lệnh Quân khu 2 là sĩ quan cao cấp bảo vệ nhân dân. Quý vị phải làm đi để gì? Mà tôi bị nguy hại khi mà đất nước Việt Nam bị Tàu Cộng xâm chiếm. Nhưng mà vì cái tình thương dân tộc, vì cái nỗi máu chảy ruột mềm, vì chúng ta là cùng dòng giống, chúng ta không thể ngồi yên, không thể vô cảm. Các sĩ quan, lời nói này tôi nói từ những vị sĩ quan tiểu đội trưởng, trung đội trưởng, tiểu đoàn trưởng, sư đoàn trưởng và quân khu trưởng. Quý vị phải làm đi trước khi quá trễ. trân trọng và thiết tha gửi cái thông điệp này đến vị sĩ quan các cấp của quân đội nhân dân. Không thể giao sinh mạng cha mẹ của quý vị, vợ con của quý vị và 95 triệu đồng bào mang dòng máu Việt Nam bị chết với 3 tên: Nguyễn Phú Trọng, Nguyễn Xuân Phúc và Nguyễn Thị Kim Ngân. Trân trọng kính chào quý vị.